Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel and an art journal tutorial. This one I am using my art journal process cards to guide the creative process. So my art journal process cards are basically the steps that we can use in creating a page. So what I'm doing is just dealing myself 4, giving me some options, but not too many, and then I'm eliminating the ones that I don't like, that don't fit for the beginning of a page, and narrowing it down to one of them. And so this one is removing paint through a stencil. So I have a gessoed page here. This is my 7x10 Canson Mixed Media, and you do need to have the page gessoed. That is going to give it a little bit of a resist, and you'll be able to remove the paint. Now, I sprayed the page with water in order to keep it from drying too much before I can get all the paint on here and then remove it. So I have sprayed water on the paint that is off to the side as well as on the page. And I'm moving fairly quickly here. That's key. You don't want this to dry as much. If it dries more, you will be able to remove less. I'm using the Art Deco Leaves stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm using a baby wipe to remove the paint. And I'm moving it to different sections because I don't want to get the yellow on the blue and the purple. I want to keep the colors fairly much. Now this stencil has lots of wide open spaces, and I think that's one of the reasons that it works so well. I'm loving this. I've played with this technique for a while, and inevitably it doesn't show as much, but this time I nailed it. So I'm ready for the next step. So I'm dealing myself 4 more cards. And then I am going to decide which I want to do here. And I choose the one that says add contrast with black and or white. I'm going to add a little bit more marks on this background. Now, the ones that I'm removing, I'm just throwing back in the deck and shuffling the deck because I might want to use them. This is the ethereal stencil in the 12-inch size, and I will put a link to these stencils in the description box below in all of my affiliates. NinnysNapkins, Carrie's TCW Stencils, TCW Shopify store, as well as Amazon. And you can check out prices and shipping and go from there. Whatever works best for you, wherever you may be. Loving this pop of black. Adding that contrast is so key. And this part of this stencil, I've used it so much in both the 12-inch size, which is what I'm using here, and the 6-inch size stencil. And I'm moving it around because I just want this all over. Now, one of the things when you're using process cards or prompt cards, um, sometimes you don't know what the next step is. So it's hard to know exactly how much of something you want to do at this stage. That's why I like the idea of dealing yourself more than one card, because then you can edit and make choices that actually fit what's in front of you. Because if you used a different stencil here, it's going to have a different effect. If you've used different colors, it's going to have different effect. My colors are very bright, so adding the black contrast really works. Now I grabbed the Dotted Rings stencil. And just a reminder that a full recap with the process cards is done at the end of my video. I try to include this to give an overall, here's what we did, recap in most of my videos. The art journal process cards will be available very soon at NinnysNapkins.com, along with all my digital sentiment packs, digital kits, as well as mixed media art kits. I chose this dotted ring stencil here because I like the smaller scale. I didn't want anything too bold. I didn't want to cover up too much of that bright and bold background. And I'm beyond thrilled right now with this background and how this is all coming together. This would be a nice step to make a collage paper or a masterboard. The combination of these stencils and these techniques would work. I'll just have black paint on my sponge, so I'm just doing a little bit of edging, as you know I like to do. That just helps me process and view the page and make decisions. Although right now I am using the process cards to guide my decision making. And you can see by adding the stenciling on top, the Art Deco leaf stencil has been pushed back. It's not as prominent, and you're not making out it as leaves right now. Just doing a little bit more shading to frame the page. Now, with the process cards, I like to give myself the option of deciding when I don't need those cards anymore. If the page has told me, here's where you need to go, I'm going to follow it. I'm adding a little more stenciling with the 6-inch stencil, the ethereal stencil. Again, I want um, small scale. And that's one of the advantages of you getting both 6-inch and 12-inch of some stencils, because you can use both on an art journal page, and you can, if you're looking for a smaller scale mark making. So I love this background so much. I'm so happy with it. And then I deal myself the next 4 cards. So use negative painting, add wavy lines with black or white, use plain or designer tissue papers, doodle with a fine point. Well, I eliminate those two because they don't seem to fit where I'm at. And I'm thinking I'm going to go with the negative painting because I have these bright and bold colors, but I also thought maybe I'll add some white lines. I've been wanting to do a page with a hot air balloon, so I decided to do the negative painting. So I traced that hot air balloon out with my Stabilo all pencil, and now I'm applying white. And I wiped it back because I didn't like it as dark as it was. And then I'm adding more. And right now, I am absolutely hating it. I think I'm mourning the loss of my beautiful, beautiful background. I don't like the white there. It's just, so I'm adding more white. I'm deciding I don't want to even see the stuff that's in the background. I'm blocking it out, going more opaque. I try to add some blue, and then I add some teal, which works better because it goes well with the stripe of teal that's right in the middle of this of the hot air balloon. I'm thinking, oh, the scale of the hot air balloon is too big. I'm really, really not happy with this. And when you have that experience, it's very disheartening. Now, I've taken the pages out of the coils, so I can throw this page out. And I seriously considered that when I'm done adding color here, and I seriously considered that. And I just didn't know what to do. So when that happens, when it's like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, walk away. Give yourself some time. Stop. Come back at it and the next day, which is what I do after I'm doing a little bit more here. Decide maybe if I shade this, I'm going to like it better. It didn't quite do enough. So I could have thrown this away, not made a video. But the next day, I do decide to continue with it, saying, you know what? What's the worst thing that could happen? Now here I'm trying to save that background. It's too flat, it's too matte, so I'm just going to put in some pattern. This is the Garden Gate stencil, which I love. It is so amazing. I want to add some interest. I'm thinking, I'm fighting here to start liking this page again. And I figure I'm going to introduce this dotted ring. I've got that on in black on the hot air balloon. So I'm going to introduce that here. And that kind of worked. It's definitely a better background now when I've got some patterning on it. Edging it a little bit more. But as I said earlier, got ahead of myself, I wasn't happy. I'm mourning the loss of my beautiful background. But here's the thing. I can recreate that. I know how to do it. So I walked away. The next day I go back to my studio and I decide, you know what? I'm just going to move ahead. I'm going to try to save this. If I don't, I can still throw it out. Or I can cut it apart and use it on something else. One, I can recreate that background again. So it's not a loss. I've learned something by art journaling, and that's why I art journal. So I whited out the basket. I hated that shape of the basket. And I thought that was throwing me off. And so just blocking it out with gesso and coming back in and painting and re-stenciling, it improved it immensely. So I thought, okay, maybe I can save this page. It may not be my favorite page, but again, all art journal pages aren't going to be your favorites. And you aren't going to hit a home run every time. But the art journal is a place that we explore and experiment and try new things. And that's how we learn and increase our skills as artists. So now I'm just adding a little more stenciling right underneath this hot air balloon. And I can't believe how much just getting rid of that odd shaped basket that I had painted black helped. But I think that walking away and giving it time allowed me to process it. So now I came in and I'm using my Inktense pencil and I ran around the hot air balloon and then activated it. Now, Inktense is ink. So once it's activated, it is permanent, unlike watercolor or Stabilo all pencils. So I did that around the hot air balloon and I'm edging the page using that as well. Benefit, it's permanent when dry. And right now with that extra shading, again, I think I've made a positive step. I'm liking the look. That hot air balloon really is standing out. Now I need to add these lines. So I grab some graphite paper and I slide the graphite paper underneath this printable and take a pen and trace. And that just basically, it's like tracing paper or charcoal paper. So I'm pressing hard, getting a good solid line so I can see it in and amongst everything. And it's very faint, but I can make it out. And I will look on Amazon and see if I can find some graphite paper. I don't know that that's been ever listed, but it's a great way to transfer pattern or onto your page. So here I'm using that Inktense block, and I think this is indigo blue. And while I love my Inktense blocks and pencils, if you go into an art store, you will be able to buy singles. So if you wanted a blue or a black to use for shading, you could without the expense of buying an entire kit. But I think you need to go to an art store to get that. So here I've used that Inktense block and now I'm activating it with water on my angle brush. And this again, it gives dimension to the hot air balloon. And at this point I'm going, okay, I've saved the page. So sometimes you need to shade. So out of the printable, I cut out a basket and now I'm just colorizing it with acrylic paint. I've got some straw colored here, and then I add some brown, and it's just a big improvement over the black box that I had earlier, in my mind. So here I'm just adding brown. So at this point, you've noticed that I am just solving the problems that present to myself. And I could be flipping through the process cards if I didn't have ideas on what to do, if I wasn't sure, and that would give me ideas. So midstream, you may find that you don't need to deal yourself 4 cards. You can just look through them and if you're stuck and get the ideas, or just abandon them altogether because you now know where the page is going. Now I'm using a felt pen here and just adding details back in. This is not permanent pen, but I'm using it because A, it was right there and handy, and I'm not putting any more wet medium on top of this, and I know that. So if you're using anything that's water soluble, water activated, if you know there's nothing wet coming afterwards, that's the safe time to use those products. I just added a little bit detail. Now I grabbed my wooden stamps because I want to add a sentiment. And I did not figure out the composition of this page. So I had a bit of a struggle putting a sentiment on here. The scale of the hot air balloon, I think, could have been smaller, leaving me more room for a sentiment to have it more balanced. But you know what? You work with what you got. And I thought maybe I could go around. So I stamp out my saying, whatever thinking I'm going to use, on paper just with archival ink, just to help me figure out the orientation. Now, initially I thought I'm going to stamp this in white. So I got my letter stamps and I stamp it with white, and I'm not able to see it. So I wipe that back quickly because it's wet acrylic paint and I can do that. and I grab the black. I'm thinking, okay, the black letters are going to work better. I grab a baby wipe and I clean the stamps off as soon as I am done with them. You make a mistake, you can wipe it off and get it lined up. I'm not trying to make these perfectly straight. That's almost impossible, and you have to embrace the imperfection of it. Some letters are going to be closer than others, and that's okay. Now, if you've got an eagle eye, you'll notice that the word let is suddenly lower. I didn't like where it was, so I was able to rub it off, repaint a little bit, and bring it down lower. And I decide I want to splatter this with gold, and then I splatter with black as well. And splattering kind of hides any errors or mistakes or smudges that you might have. I could take my fine line applicator bottle and fill in the letters. What I do is I just grab that same marker and fill them in a little bit. There were some blank spaces where I didn't get enough paint, and I'm just touching it up just to make it. But I like the imperfection of the stamps. So there's a close-up. You can see the shimmer of the gold. I'm so happy that I didn't throw this away, that I persisted and took the challenge. So let's do the recap. I started with removing the paint through the stencil technique. Then I added contrast by stenciling on a series of black motifs. Then I used negative painting to bring out the hot air balloon. I stamped, or I did some stenciling on the background, the blue part, the sky, to add pattern and interest to that background. I shaded and the hot air balloon, and that made the world of difference. So when in doubt, shade your focal image before you decide. I added a sentiment by using my wooden letter stamps, and I used acrylic paint. I splattered the whole page with gold and black, and I dried in between. And then I edged the page. So when a page goes south, don't panic. You've got nothing to lose. This page was guided by the Art Journal process cards. Thanks for joining me. Give me a thumbs up, ask me a question, leave me a comment. And until next time, go get creative.